I am Priscilla Winters, 36 years old, and I sold my tech company for $1 billion last year. My younger sister Vanessa was always the favorite, the beautiful one. My husband Derek was the charming venture capitalist who swept me off my feet. I never thought family would be the ones to try to kill me. The memory still haunts me, Vanessa whispering, "Say hello to the sharks," as she shoved me off our yacht into the dark Pacific. Derek just stood there smiling, but they never expected what happened next. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more shocking stories of family betrayal and unexpected comebacks. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. I grew up in Seattle with my sister Vanessa, who is 3 years younger than me. From the beginning, we were different in almost every way. While I was practical and studious, Vanessa was outgoing and naturally charming. I spent my weekends coding and building small programs on our family computer, while Vanessa was winning beauty pageants and collecting admirers everywhere she went. Our parents, both high school teachers, did their best to support our different paths. But I always sensed they understood Vanessa better. They would beam with pride at her performances and social achievements, while my academic accomplishments earned respectful nods. It was not that they did not love me, just that Vanessa had a way of commanding attention that I never mastered. I discovered my passion for technology when I was 12. Our computer science teacher, Mrs. Harlow, recognized something in me that others missed. She gave me advanced projects and stayed after school to teach me programming languages that were not part of the curriculum. "You have a gift, Priscilla," she told me once. "Your mind works in extraordinary ways." Those words became my anchor through difficult times. College was a struggle financially. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for my computer science degree at the University of Washington. Morning barista, shifts, afternoon library hours, and weekend tech support for local businesses. Meanwhile, Vanessa received a partial scholarship to study communications, supplemented by our parents emptying their savings. I never resented this. Vanessa had a way of making everyone feel her dreams were worth investing in. During those years, I barely slept. When I was not working or studying, I was coding in my tiny apartment, developing the algorithm that would eventually become my company's foundation. I was fascinated by the possibility of creating artificial intelligence that could interpret human emotions through digital interactions. Most experts said it was impossible, which only made me more determined. After graduation, I took a mid-level programming job at a tech company, while continuing my personal project nights and weekends. 3 years later, I had a working prototype of what I called Emotional Intelligence Interface, or EII. It was revolutionary, an AI system that could analyze text, voice patterns, and digital behavior to accurately interpret emotional states and respond appropriately. I quit my job and founded NeuroSync with my life savings of $60,000. The first 2 years were brutal. Investors would get excited by the demo, but back out when they learned a young woman with no business background was the founder. I heard impressive, but too risky so many times I almost gave up. Throughout this period, Vanessa was trying to build her modeling career in Los Angeles. She was beautiful enough, but at 5'7", she was considered too short for high fashion. Every few months, she would call me in tears about rent she could not pay, or car repairs she could not afford. Despite my own financial struggles, I always sent what I could. "You are my safety net, Prissy," she would say, using the childhood nickname only she was allowed to use. The turning point for NeuroSync came when my algorithm correctly identified early signs of depression in users of a major social media platform during a small test run. Suddenly, the health and wellness applications became apparent, and investors started calling me instead of the other way around. Within 18 months, NeuroSync grew from 3 employees to over 100, and our valuation hit $50 million. That was when I met Derek Hamilton at a tech investment conference in San Francisco. He was everything. I was not tall, conventionally attractive, socially polished, and from old money. As a venture capitalist specializing in AI startups, he approached me after my presentation with thoughtful questions about my technology. I was used to men in the industry either talking down to me or trying to steal my ideas. Derek seemed genuinely interested in both my work and me. He pursued me aggressively, sending flowers to my office, arranging accidental meetings at industry events, and eventually asking me to dinner. Dating had never been my priority, but there was something about his persistence that broke through my defenses. When he kissed me on our third date, I felt a rush of emotions I had denied myself for years. Our relationship progressed at lightning speed. Within 8 months, we were married in a small ceremony on the California coast. Vanessa was my maid of honor, crying tears of joy that seemed genuine. "You deserve all the happiness in the world," she told me, hugging me tightly. I believed her. In those moments, the competitive undercurrent that had always existed between us seemed to disappear. Derek integrated himself into every aspect of my life. He offered business advice, connected me with influential people, and even suggested I make him Chief Operating Officer of NeuroSync. I hesitated at this last request, and for the first time, I saw a flash of coldness in his eyes. It passed quickly, replaced by understanding. "Of course you built this company," he said. "I just want to contribute to your success." I appreciated his respect for my boundaries, not realizing it was merely tactical retreat. Then came the deal that changed everything. Tech Global, one of the largest technology companies in the world, offered to acquire NeuroSync for $1 billion. The number was staggering. My board urged me to accept, pointing out that the resources of Tech Global would help scale my technology globally. After weeks of negotiation, I agreed with conditions that protected my core team and ensured the technology would be used ethically. The day the deal closed, Derek organized a celebration at our home. As we toasted with champagne, I caught a look between him and Vanessa, who had flown in for the occasion. It was brief, a moment of silent communication that struck me as odd but not alarming. I was too overwhelmed by the sudden wealth to pay much attention. $1 billion. The poor girl from Seattle, who worked 3 jobs to pay for college, was now one of the richest women in the country. If only I had known what that money would cost me. 18 months into my marriage, and 6 months after the billion-dollar acquisition, I began noticing subtle changes in Derek. The man who once could not bear to be apart from me now had frequent business trips. His attentive morning texts became sporadic. He started taking phone calls in another room, his voice dropping to a whisper whenever I approached. At first, I attributed these changes to normal relationship evolution. The honeymoon phase does not last forever, and we were both busy professionals. But then, Vanessa began appearing at our San Francisco mansion with increasing frequency. "The modeling industry is so dead right now," she explained when she asked to stay with us for a few weeks. "Just until I figure out my next move." Those weeks turned into months. I welcomed her presence initially, thinking it might be nice to rebuild our sisterly bond now that competition for our parents' attention was long behind us. Looking back, I should have paid attention to the way she and Derek interacted. There was an ease between them that went beyond in-law friendliness. They shared inside jokes. Their conversations would stop abruptly when I entered a room. More than once I caught Derek's hand lingering on Vanessa's shoulder or the small of her back. One evening, I came home early from a meeting to find them huddled over Derek's laptop in his study. They jumped apart when I entered, and Derek quickly closed whatever they had been looking at. Just showing Vanessa some investment opportunities, he explained smoothly, for when she decides what to do next. I nodded, but something felt off. That night, I checked our network activity logs, a security measure I had installed when we moved into the mansion. Derek's computer had accessed our joint financial accounts, specifically the ones containing the bulk of my acquisition money. This was not unusual in itself, as Derek managed much of our personal finances. What concerned me was that these searches focused on transfer limits and international banking regulations. The next morning, I confronted him over breakfast. "Is everything okay with our finances? I noticed you were looking into large transfers." Derek's face remained impassive, but his coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Just routine planning," he said. "With wealth like ours, we need to be strategic about asset allocation." He smiled and added, "You know finance bores you, Priscilla. Trust me to handle this part." He was right that investment strategies were not my expertise, but something in his dismissive tone raised an alarm. For the first time, I wondered if I truly knew the man I had married. That afternoon, I called Martin Reeves, a private investigator recommended by my company's former security chief. "I need a thorough background check on two people," I told him, discreetly. While waiting for Martin's findings, I began paying closer attention to Derek and Vanessa's movements. They seemed to find excuses to be alone together, whether it was shopping trips or long walks along the beach near our home. Twice I pretended to be on work calls while actually listening to their conversations in the next room, but they spoke in vague terms that revealed nothing concrete. 3 days later, Martin called with preliminary results. "Mrs. Hamilton, I found some concerning information about your husband's financial history," he said carefully. "Before meeting you, he was nearly bankrupt due to failed investments and gambling debts. He took out several high-interest loans that were suddenly paid off shortly after your marriage." My stomach tightened. "And my sister, Miss Winters, has significant credit card debt across multiple accounts. She also has been making large cash deposits into an offshore account over the past 3 months, totaling about $100,000. The source of these funds is unclear." After hanging up, I sat in my home office trying to process this information. The Derek I thought I knew was financially responsible and successful. Had our entire relationship been built on lies? And where was Vanessa getting that kind of money? I decided to take more direct action. Under the guise of upgrading our home security system, I installed hidden cameras in common areas of the mansion, including Derek's study. I told our household staff they had a paid week off, claiming Derek and I wanted privacy for our anniversary. The first 2 days yielded nothing unusual on the cameras. On the third day, I had a scheduled meeting with Tech Global executives and told Derek I would be gone all day. Instead, I left for 2 hours, then parked down the street and accessed the security feed from my tablet. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Derek and Vanessa were in his study, not in a romantic embrace, as I had partly suspected, but reviewing documents that looked like my financial statements and will. "Once it is done, how soon can we access the funds?" Vanessa asked. Derek pointed to something on a paper. "The succession plan transfers control immediately in case of death. Priscilla updated her will after the acquisition, naming you as her sole heir since we have no children. With both documents, we will have full legal access within days." Vanessa smiled in a way I had never seen before, cold and calculating. "And they will never find the body in the open ocean. Perfect accident." "The yacht trip next week is our opportunity," Derek replied. "We will not get a better chance." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. They were planning to kill me. My husband and sister were conspiring to murder me for my money. The betrayal was so enormous I could barely comprehend it. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. My first instinct was to confront them, to demand how they could plot something so terrible against someone who loved them. But a deeper instinct for survival kept me from acting rashly. If I confronted them now, they might accelerate their plan or find another way to eliminate me. That evening, I returned home and pretended everything was normal. I smiled through dinner as Derek discussed the yacht trip he had planned for the following week. "I thought we could use a second honeymoon," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. 2 weeks on, the Azure Dream sailing down the Mexican coast. "That sounds wonderful," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "Will it be just us?" Actually, Vanessa chimed in. "Derek invited me along. I hope that is okay. I have always wanted to see the Mexican Riviera." I met her eyes searching for any sign of the sister I had grown up with. The girl who had once held my hand on the first day of school and promised we would always look out for each other. All I saw was a stranger wearing my sister's face. "Of course," I said. "It will be fun, the three of us." That night, I lay awake beside Derek, listening to his steady breathing and wondering how someone could sleep so peacefully after planning murder. I had 6 days to prepare for a trip that was meant to be my last. The Azure Dream was everything a luxury yacht should be: 80 feet of gleaming white perfection, with 4 staterooms, a hot tub on the upper deck, and a crew of 6 to cater to our every need. Under different circumstances, I would have been awestruck by its opulence. Instead, as we boarded in San Diego Harbor, I felt like I was walking onto the stage for my own execution. I had spent the previous days making careful preparations. I told my assistant Jane about my suspicions, giving her a sealed envelope with instructions to open it if she did not hear from me for 3 consecutive days. I activated the location tracking on my personal devices and created a new emergency email account that would send automated messages to specific people if I did not log in within 48 hours. I also transferred $10 million to a hidden account only I could access separate from the assets Derek knew about. The first few days on the yacht passed in a haze of false normalcy. We sunbathed on the deck, swam in the clear blue waters, and dined on exquisite meals prepared by the yacht's chef. The crew was always present, which I believed kept Derek and Vanessa from acting on their plan: safety in witnesses. By the 4th day, we had traveled far from the Mexican coast, with Captain Rodriguez mentioning we were in open water about 100 miles from the nearest land. That evening, Vanessa suggested the crew deserved a night off from serving us dinner, insisting we could manage ourselves for one meal. Derek quickly agreed, telling the captain to give everyone the evening off in their quarters. The 5th night, Derek prepared cocktails on the upper deck as we watched the sunset. "A special recipe," he said, handing me a brightly colored drink with a pineapple garnish. "Try it, babe. I made it extra strong, just how you like it." I pretended to sip, while actually letting the liquid spill down the side of the glass, away from his view. "Delicious," I murmured, then set it down on a table when he turned to make Vanessa's drink. Over the next hour, I feigned increasing drowsiness, slurring my words and becoming unsteady on my feet. "I think I need to lie down," I said intentionally, stumbling as I stood. Derek was immediately at my side, his arm around my waist. "Let me help you to our cabin." His solicitude would have seemed loving to anyone watching, but I could feel the tension in his grip, the eagerness poorly disguised as concern. In our stateroom, I collapsed onto the bed, keeping my eyes half closed, but maintaining a sliver of vision. Derek checked my responsiveness, waving his hand in front of my face and calling my name. Satisfied that whatever he had put in my drink had worked, he left the cabin, locking the door behind him. I waited 15 minutes before silently moving to the door and pressing my ear against it. I could hear Derek and Vanessa talking on the deck above their voices, carrying through the yacht's air vents. "Is she out?" Vanessa asked. "Completely," Derek replied. "I used enough sedative to knock out someone twice her size. She will not wake up even when we move her." "Good. The crew is all below deck watching some soccer game. We have at least an hour." I quickly changed into dark athletic clothes and water-resistant shoes I had hidden in my luggage. I secured a small waterproof pouch containing a GPS beacon emergency cache and a compact satellite phone around my waist under my shirt. Then I slipped back into bed, resuming my drugged pose, just as I heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Derek entered with Vanessa close behind. "Time to move her," he said. "Remember, it needs to look like she was sleepwalking or drunk and fell overboard accidentally." As they approached the bed, I made my decision. Rather than being carried to my fate, I would confront them. I sat up abruptly, startling them both. Looking for something, I asked, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The shock on their faces would have been almost comical under different circumstances. Derek recovered first, his expression shifting from surprise to concern with practiced ease. "Priscilla, you are awake. How are you feeling? You seemed really out of it earlier." Vanessa stood frozen, her eyes darting between Derek and me. "Drop the act," I said, standing up. "I heard everything. I know about your plan to drug me and throw me overboard. I know about the will, the money, all of it." There was a moment of tense silence, then Vanessa's face transformed. The mask of sisterly affection fell away, completely replaced by cold contempt. "You were always the smart one, weren't you?" she said, her voice dripping with resentment. "Always one step ahead, always so perfect, Priscilla, with her brilliant mind and now her $1 billion. How long?" I asked, looking between them. "How long have you been planning this?" Derek shrugged, no longer bothering to hide his true nature. "Since before the wedding, actually. I needed access to your assets, and marriage was the simplest way." "And you," I turned to Vanessa, the betrayal from my own sister, cutting deeper than anything Derek could inflict. "Please," she scoffed. "Do you know what it is like living in your shadow? Poor Vanessa. Not as smart as her sister, not as successful. Always needing help, always the charity case. I deserve some of what you have. We share the same blood." "So you decided to spill that blood for money." The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Enough talk," Derek said, advancing toward me. "This changes nothing except the method. No one will hear you scream out here." I backed toward the door, but Vanessa moved quickly to block my exit. Derek lunged for me, and I dodged, sending him crashing into the bedside table. I managed to slip past Vanessa and ran for the deck, hoping to reach the crew quarters and the safety of witnesses. I made it to the main deck, screaming for help, but the engines of the yacht were too loud, the crew cabins too far away. Derek tackled me from behind his weight, knocking the breath from my lungs. "Hold her arms," he grunted to Vanessa, who grabbed my wrists. I fought wildly, landing a solid kick to Derek's stomach that made him double over. I broke free from Vanessa's grip and scrambled toward the railing, thinking I could jump and swim to the other side of the yacht where the crew might see me. But Derek recovered too quickly. He seized my hair, yanking me backward with such force that I saw stars. Together, he and Vanessa dragged me to the edge of the yacht. I clawed at them, drawing blood from Derek's cheek, fighting with the desperate strength of someone facing death. For a moment, as I stared into Vanessa's eyes, I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation, a ghost of the sister I once knew. "Vanessa, please," I gasped. We are family." Her expression hardened. She leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear, and whispered, "Say hello to the sharks for me, Prissy." Then she shoved me hard, her hands striking my chest with surprising strength. I felt myself falling, Derek's smiling face and Vanessa's cold eyes receding above me. Then came the shocking impact of hitting the water from 20 feet up like concrete against my back. The cold enveloped me, water filling my nose and mouth as I plunged beneath the surface. Above me, the yacht's engines roared louder. Through the dark water, I could see its lights moving away as Derek and Vanessa made their escape, leaving me to die in the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean. The cold hit me first, a shock that forced the air from my lungs and nearly caused me to inhale water. I fought the instinct to panic, forcing myself to think through the fog of adrenaline and fear. The surface, I needed to reach the surface. I kicked hard, my lungs burning, until I broke through into the night air with a desperate gasp. The yacht was already 100 yards away, its lights receding into the darkness. For one wild moment I considered screaming, but reality set in quickly. No one would hear me over the engines, and the only people who knew I was here wanted me dead. Treading water, I tried to orient myself. The moon was bright enough to distinguish the horizon, but all I could see was endless ocean in every direction. No land, no other vessels, nothing but black water stretching to meet the star-filled sky. The gravity of my situation hit me then. I was alone in the open ocean at night, at least 100 miles from shore. The statistics ran through my head, automatically survival time, in 60-degree water, likelihood of shark encounters, dehydration rates. None of them offered much hope. But I had one advantage my would-be killers did not know about. I had been a competitive swimmer through college. Not professional level, but good enough to earn a partial scholarship that supplemented my 3 jobs. I had the technique and endurance most people lacked. And more importantly, I had prepared for this possibility, albeit hastily. I reached under my shirt for the waterproof pouch. Inside was the GPS beacon, which I immediately activated. The tiny light blinked green, signaling it was working. Whether anyone would pick up the signal this far out was another question entirely. Next, I needed to conserve energy. Hypothermia would kill me faster than exhaustion if I remained actively swimming all night. I switched to a relaxed backstroke, focusing on keeping my face above water while expending minimal energy. As I floated staring up at the vast canopy of stars, my mind cycled through emotions, disbelief at the betrayal, rage at their callousness, fear of my circumstances, and beneath it all, a steely determination to survive, if only to see justice done. Hours passed. My teeth chattered uncontrollably, and my limbs grew increasingly numb despite my efforts to keep moving. I thought of the survival training I had taken 3 years ago during a corporate team-building retreat. Our instructor, a former Navy SEAL named Jack, had emphasized mental fortitude above all else. "Your mind will give up before your body," he had said. "Tell yourself you can last another minute, then another, then another. Break survival down into manageable increments." So that is what I did. 1 more minute, 1 more cycle of breathing, 1 more look at the stars. The night seemed eternal, but eventually the black sky began to lighten, almost imperceptibly, in the east. Dawn brought a new challenge, the sun. Without protection, dehydration would become my enemy. I had no choice but to continue swimming, hoping to encounter something, anything, that might aid my survival. Mid-morning, I spotted something floating in the water about 50 yards away. Swimming toward it, I discovered it was a cushion from the yacht, presumably thrown overboard in the struggle. This small piece of buoyancy was a lifeline. I clung to it, allowing my exhausted muscles to rest while keeping my head above water. The day passed in a blur of sun thirst and growing despair. I had been in the water for nearly 20 hours when I heard the distant sound of a motor. At first, I thought it was a hallucination born of desperation, but then I saw it a small fishing boat perhaps half a mile away. Summoning my remaining strength, I waved the cushion above my head and screamed until my throat was raw. The boat continued on its course, showing no signs of having seen me. In desperation, I activated the emergency strobe on my GPS beacon, a feature I had been saving to preserve battery. The tiny light seemed pathetic against the vastness of the ocean, but miraculously, the boat changed direction. They had seen me. As it drew closer, I could see two men on board, a middle-aged man and a younger one, perhaps his son. They stared in disbelief as they pulled alongside me. "Dios mío," the older man exclaimed. "A woman in the middle of the ocean." "Help," I croaked, my voice barely functioning after hours of saltwater exposure and screaming, "Please." They pulled me aboard the vessel, which I could now see was named Morning Light, in faded paint across its bow. The younger man wrapped a blanket around my shivering body, while the older one, who introduced himself as Captain Luis Rivera, peppered me with questions in a mix of Spanish and English. "How did you get here? Where is your boat? What happened?" I could not tell them the full truth, not yet. Accident, I managed. Fell overboard. Yacht. Captain Rivera exchanged skeptical glances with his son Marco. A well-dressed American woman miles from shore with no vessel in sight was not a common occurrence in their fishing grounds. "No boats have passed here," Marco said. "Not for 2 days." I closed my eyes, too exhausted to explain or convince them. Captain Rivera, whatever his suspicions, was kind enough to prioritize my immediate needs. "Rest now, Senora. Questions later. Marco, get her water slowly. And the first aid kit." Over the next few hours, as the fishing boat headed toward the Mexican coast, I drifted in and out of consciousness. They treated my saltwater sores, hydrated me carefully, and kept me warm as my body temperature slowly normalized. By evening, I had recovered enough to sit up and speak more clearly. Captain Rivera sat across from me in the small cabin, his weathered face serious. "Now, Senora, you tell us true story. We are 12 hours from shore. Police will have questions." I made a decision then. These men had saved my life, but involving them further might put them in danger. Derek and Vanessa believed I was dead, and that gave me an advantage I could not sacrifice. "My name is Priscilla Winters," I said, using my maiden name. "I was on a private yacht with people I thought I could trust. There was an argument. They pushed me overboard and left me to die." Rivera's eyes widened. "This is attempted murder. We must report to authorities." I shook my head. "Please, I need to handle this my way. These people are wealthy and connected. They would deny everything, and you would be drawn into something dangerous." "But justice." "I will get justice," I assured him, a new resolve hardening within me. "But first I need to disappear. Can you help me reach shore quietly? I can pay you well for your trouble." Captain Rivera seemed conflicted, but Marco leaned forward eagerly. "How well?" I named a figure that made both men's eyebrows rise. "In cash. Once I can access certain resources." After some discussion in rapid Spanish, they agreed. The following morning, they docked at a small fishing village well away from tourist areas. True to my word, I used the emergency cash from my waterproof pouch to pay for a room at a modest hotel and gave them a substantial down payment on my promised sum. "I will send the rest," I assured them. "But please tell no one you found me." Once alone in the small hotel room, I finally allowed myself to break down. The tears came in violent waves. the full weight of the betrayal crushing me now that immediate survival was no longer my focus. My own sister. My husband. The two people I should have been able to trust above all others had tried to murder me for money. When the storm of emotion passed, I was left with a clarity I had never experienced before. I accessed my emergency email using the hotel's computer and contacted Jane, my assistant, whose loyalty had been proven over years. Jane's response was immediate and emotional, but professional, as always. "Oh my God, Priscilla! I opened your envelope yesterday after not hearing from you. I have been beside myself. Derek and Vanessa returned 2 days ago. They reported you missing, claiming you fell overboard during the night while they were asleep. Search and rescue operations have been called off as of this morning." Derek gave a tearful press conference. "What do you need me to do?" So the plan was proceeding exactly as they had intended. I was officially presumed dead, and they were positioning themselves to inherit my fortune. I typed a careful response to Jane outlining what I needed: secure communication channels, access to my hidden funds, and absolute secrecy about my survival. Over the next week, recovering in that small coastal town, I watched news reports of my tragic accident on the hotel television. Derek played the grieving husband masterfully, his voice breaking as he described waking to find me missing. Vanessa stood beside him, her eyes red and puffy, a picture of sisterly devastation. "Priscilla was everything to us," she told reporters, dabbing at her tears with a tissue. "I do not know how to go on without my big sister." The performance was flawless. If I had not heard them plotting my murder, had not felt Vanessa's hands shoving me into the ocean, I might have believed their grief myself. 1 week after my death, they announced that according to my will and business succession plan, Vanessa would inherit my personal fortune, and Derek would take control of my remaining business interests. The speed with which they moved confirmed what I had overheard on the yacht, that they had prepared these legal maneuvers well in advance. Watching them claim my life's work, I felt a cold rage unlike anything I had experienced before. This was no longer just about survival. This was about justice, about making them face consequences for what they had done. With Jane's help, I assembled a small team of people I trusted implicitly. Theodore Winters, my corporate lawyer who had opposed my marriage to Derek from the beginning. Olivia Chen, a cybersecurity expert who had worked with me at Neurosync. And Martin Reeves, the private investigator who had uncovered Derek's financial troubles. From my hideout in Mexico, I began to plan my return, not as a victim seeking help, but as the architect of their downfall. The small beachside hotel room became my war room. I dyed my naturally brown hair black, wore sunglasses, even indoors, and used the alias Patricia Lane in all local interactions. No one connected the sunburned, dark-haired woman keeping to herself with the wealthy tech entrepreneur whose tragic death made international news. My team assembled virtually, connecting through encrypted channels Jane had established. Our first meeting set the tone for everything that followed. "Before we begin," I said, facing my laptop camera, "I want to be clear about what we are doing. This is not about revenge in the traditional sense. I do not want to become like them. This is about justice and protecting others they might harm in the future." Theodore, his silver hair and serious expression filling one quadrant of my screen, nodded in agreement. What they did was attempted murder, plain and simple. But proving it will be challenging without direct evidence. "That is where I come in," Martin said from another window. The private investigator had been working non-stop since my disappearance. I have been monitoring their activities since they returned. "They are already spending your money, Priscilla. New cars, jewelry, a down payment on a vacation home in Aspen. And I have been tracking their digital footprint," Olivia added, her young face serious beneath her blue-streaked hair. Derek has been researching countries without extradition treaties. They are planning to transfer large sums offshore within the month. The information stoked my determination. Then we work backward, I said. We need 3 types of evidence proof of their plot before the yacht trip documentation of the financial fraud they are currently committing, and if possible, direct evidence of the murder attempt itself. Over the next 3 weeks, my team executed a methodical plan. Theodore reviewed all legal documents Derek and Vanessa had filed since my death, identifying numerous irregularities and falsified signatures. Martin dug deeper into Derek's past, uncovering disturbing patterns. I found 2 previous girlfriends who died under suspicious circumstances he reported during our 3rd week. Both wealthy, both in accidents, where Derek was the last person to see them alive. Neither case had enough evidence for charges, but the pattern is unmistakable. He is a serial killer, Jane whispered, visibly shaken. A specific type, I corrected. He targets wealthy women for their money, and Vanessa is his accomplice this time. Probably because my will required family connection for inheritance. Olivia's contribution was perhaps the most damning. She managed to recover deleted emails and text messages between Derek and Vanessa going back over a year, well before my marriage. Look at this exchange from 14 months ago, she said, sharing her screen, to show us a text conversation. Derek, the engagement is set. She said yes. Vanessa, of course she did. My sister always wanted what she could never have. A real relationship. Derek, be nice. Your sister is my ticket to fixing everything and your ticket out of debt. Vanessa. How long do we have to wait, Derek? Until after the company sells. Maximum value. Then, a tragic accident. Vanessa. I can be patient for a billion reasons. Reading their casual discussion of my murder made me physically ill, but it also hardened my resolve. This was premeditated from the very beginning. Every kiss, every I love you, every moment of what I thought was building a life together had been a calculated step toward my death. Meanwhile, Jane coordinated the most delicate part of our plan, preparing the mansion for my return. Using trusted contractors who believed they were installing a surprise gift for the homeowners, she arranged for sophisticated surveillance equipment throughout the house and a specialized security system I could control remotely. The mansion is ready, she confirmed in our final planning meeting. And I have confirmed they will be returning from their European spending spree on Thursday night. 3 months after being pushed into the Pacific Ocean, I was ready to confront my would-be killers. I flew back to California using fake identification papers Olivia had procured my appearance, sufficiently altered that no one connected me to the presumed dead Priscilla Winters. The night of their return, I entered my own home through a service entrance, only I knew about using biometric security that Derek had never bothered to reset. The irony of his overconfidence providing my access point was not lost on me. I walked through the darkened halls of the mansion, reacquainting myself with the space that had once been my home. Everything looked different now, tainted by betrayal. Vanessa had redecorated parts of the house, replacing my carefully chosen artwork with gaudy pieces that matched her less refined taste. In the master bedroom, I found evidence of their relationship now, in the open Vanessa's clothes in my closet, her makeup on my vanity. They had not even waited a decent interval before dropping the pretense of grieving sister and husband. I set up in the dining room, arranging a table for 3 with elegant place settings. At the center, I placed a beautifully wrapped box, a gift containing everything I had gathered over the past 3 months. Then I waited, watching the security feed on a tablet as their car approached the gates. Derek and Vanessa arrived just after midnight, clearly intoxicated and arguing as they entered. They stopped short in the foyer, noticing the lights I had turned on throughout the ground floor. Did you leave these on? Vanessa asked, her speech slightly slurred. Derek frowned, suddenly alert, despite the alcohol. Number, stay here. He moved cautiously through the house checking rooms, while Vanessa followed behind, despite his instruction. Their confusion grew when they heard the soft music I had started playing, one of Derek's favorite jazz albums. Someone is here, he hissed, pulling Vanessa behind him in a show of protection that might have seemed gallant if I did not know his true nature. They made their way to the dining room, stopping in the doorway when they saw the elaborate table setting. 3 places, fine china crystal glasses, filled with wine, and the gift box in the center. What the hell is this? Vanessa whispered, clutching Derek's arm. That was my cue. I stepped out from the shadows of the adjacent room wearing the same outfit I had worn the night of the yacht party, my hair returned to its natural color. Welcome home, I said calmly. I have been waiting for you. The color drained from both their faces. Derek stumbled backward, nearly knocking Vanessa over. For a moment, neither could speak, their eyes wide with shock and terror. This is not possible, Derek finally managed. You are dead. We saw you drown. You saw me fall, I corrected. You assumed I drowned. A rather large miscalculation on your part. Vanessa let out a strangled sound somewhere between a gasp and a scream. You are not real. This is not happening. I stepped forward into the full light of the chandelier. I assure you, Vanessa, I am very real. And unlike you, I am not here to kill anyone. I am here to deliver a gift. Derek seemed to recover some of his composure, his mind visibly working through options. Priscilla, thank God you are alive. We thought we lost you. There was a terrible accident. Stop, I cut him off. Let us not insult each other's intelligence. I heard you planning my murder. I felt Vanessa push me off that yacht. I know everything. You cannot prove anything, Vanessa said, her shock giving way to defiance. It is your word against ours. Everyone already thinks you had an accident. I smiled, a cold expression that made both of them tense. That brings me to my gift. I gestured to the box on the table. Open it. Derek approached cautiously, as if the box might contain a bomb. In some ways, it did, just not the explosive kind. He lifted the lid and stared at the contents, his face contorting with dawning horror. Inside was a custom-made presentation containing 4 items. First, a waterproof camera, the same one I had hidden in my cabin on the yacht, which had captured their conversation about drugging me and staging my accident. Second, a flash drive containing all the recovered emails and texts between them, dating back to before my marriage, explicitly discussing their plan to kill me for my money. Third, financial records showing their embezzlement and fraud since my death, along with documentation of the secret accounts they had established. Fourth, and perhaps most damaging, police warrants for their arrest on charges of attempted murder, conspiracy fraud, and a host of other crimes already signed by a judge, thanks to Theodore's legal maneuvering. This is impossible, Derek whispered, rifling through the documents with trembling hands. Actually, it was quite possible with the right team, I replied. A team of people who, unlike you two, understand the meaning of loyalty. Vanessa suddenly lunged for the box, trying to grab the evidence, but I was ready. With a press of a button on my phone, the dining room doors locked automatically. The police are already outside, I informed them. Along with FBI agents, since some of your financial crimes cross state lines. They were waiting for my signal, which I just sent. Derek's face transformed the mask of civilized behavior, dropping entirely to reveal the predator beneath. He flipped the heavy dining table toward me with surprising strength, sending dishes crashing to the floor, and charged toward a side door. It was locked, of course. All exits were secured except the main entrance where law enforcement waited. Realizing this, he turned on me with murderous rage, grabbing a knife from the scattered cutlery on the floor. "You think you are so clever," he snarled, advancing toward me. "If I am going down, you are coming with me. For real this time." I stood my ground. The difference between us, Derek, is that I planned for every contingency. As he lunged, the hidden door behind me opened, revealing Martin and two security specialists who had been waiting out of sight. They tackled Derek, disarming him with professional efficiency. Vanessa, seeing her accomplice subdued, broke down completely. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing and rocking back and forth. "It was his idea," she wailed. "He made me do it. I never wanted to hurt you, Prissy." I looked at my sister, the person who had shared my childhood, who had once been my closest family now, reduced to a pathetic, blubbering mess, trying to save herself by betraying her partner in crime. "You whispered in my ear before pushing me off that yacht," I reminded her, my voice steady. "You told me to say hello to the sharks. Was that his idea too?" She had no answer, only more tears. The police entered, then reading them their rights as they were handcuffed. Derek continued to struggle and threaten, while Vanessa went limply, still crying and trying to plead her case to anyone who would listen. As they were led away, I stood in my reclaimed home, surrounded by the wreckage of the confrontation. The victory felt hollow in some ways. I had survived. I had stopped them from enjoying the fruits of their crime. Justice would be served. But nothing could restore what I had lost: my trust in the people I had loved most. Yet amid the broken glass and scattered evidence of betrayal, I felt something unexpected: freedom. The worst had happened, and I had survived it. What was there left to fear? The seconds after Derek and Vanessa were taken into custody stretched into a strange, suspended moment of silence. The dining room, once the setting for intimate family dinners, now lay in disarray, a physical manifestation of the destruction of those relationships. Crystal fragments caught the light from the chandelier, scattering tiny rainbows across the walls like misplaced celebrations. FBI agent Lawson approached her, face professionally neutral, but her eyes conveying something like respect. "Miss Winters, we will need your formal statement, but it can wait until tomorrow if you prefer. You have been through quite an ordeal." I nodded, suddenly exhausted, now that the adrenaline was ebbing. Tomorrow would be better. I need some time. After the law enforcement teams departed, taking the evidence with them, I was left with Martin, Jane, and the security specialists. The house felt too large, too empty, yet simultaneously claustrophobic with memories. "You should not stay here tonight," Jane suggested gently. "I have a hotel suite ready. Clean clothes, everything you need." I agreed, too drained to argue. As we walked to the car, Martin briefed me on what would happen next. They will be held without bail, given the severity of the charges and flight risk. The preliminary hearing will likely be within 48 hours. The hotel suite Jane had arranged was blessedly anonymous, a neutral space untainted by betrayal. I showered for nearly an hour, as if the hot water could wash away more than just the physical remnants of the day. Afterward, wrapped in a plush robe, I joined my small team in the suite's living area. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, her usual technological confidence replaced by uncertainty in this human domain. "Now," I said, "we prepare for the storm. Once the news breaks that I am alive, there will be a media frenzy. Theodore is filing motions to freeze all assets Derek and Vanessa tried to access. And, personally, I start rebuilding." Sleep did not come easily that night, but for the first time in months, it was not fear keeping me awake, but possibilities. The world thought Priscilla Winters had died. Perhaps in some ways she had. The woman who trusted too easily, who believed in the fundamental goodness of those she loved, no longer existed. But who would take her place? The next morning brought the media explosion we had anticipated. My resurrection from the dead and the arrest of my husband and sister on attempted murder charges created a perfect storm of public interest. Theodore had prepared a simple statement confirming I was alive, that criminal proceedings were underway, and requesting privacy during this difficult time. Of course, privacy was the one thing money could not buy in this situation. Every news outlet, talk show, and true crime podcast wanted an exclusive. Social media exploded with hashtags like number back from the dead and number billion-dollar betrayal. Old photos of Derek, Vanessa, and me at charity events were dissected for signs people claimed to have missed. Through Theodore's connections, I arranged to give a single interview to a respected journalist known for her integrity. The strategic purpose was to control the narrative. The personal purpose was to say my piece and then retreat from the spotlight to heal. They underestimated you, the journalist observed during our carefully managed conversation. What do you think was their biggest mistake? I considered this, thinking back to those dark moments in the ocean. They saw only what they wanted from me, money and status. They never saw me the whole person, with skills and determination they never bothered to learn about. In the end, they were defeated by the parts of me they ignored. The preliminary hearing was a media circus. I attended wearing a simple navy suit, my posture straight, my expression composed. When Derek and Vanessa were brought in, I looked at them directly, refusing to flinch. Derek glared back with undisguised hatred. Vanessa could not meet my eyes. The evidence was overwhelming. The recording from the yacht alone was devastating, capturing their explicit discussion of murdering me for my money. Their electronic communications provided years of premeditation. The financial records showed fraud both before and after my presumed death. Both were denied bail. As they were led away, Vanessa finally looked at me, her expression, a complex mixture of shame, anger, and something that might have been regret. I gave her nothing in return, no hatred, but no forgiveness either. Just the steady gaze of someone who had moved beyond her power to hurt. Outside, the courthouse reporters shouted questions about how it felt to face my would-be killers. I paused before getting into the waiting car. Justice is not the same as healing, I said. Today was about justice. Healing is my private journey. The months that followed were filled with legal proceedings. Derek and Vanessa turned on each other, each trying to minimize their own culpability by implicating the other. The prosecution had little trouble building their case with our evidence and their mutual betrayal. Throughout this period, I began the process of reclaiming my life. I moved out of the mansion too tainted by memories to ever feel like home again. I purchased a modern, secure apartment overlooking the bay, its open layout and walls of glass, a deliberate contrast to the hiding and secrets of the past year. I also faced the challenge of legally returning from the dead. The paperwork was staggering, undoing death certificates, reclaiming frozen accounts, re-establishing legal identity. Theodore handled most of it, but some things required my personal attention. The irony, Theodore remarked during one marathon document signing session, is that Derek and Vanessa actually made some of this easier by moving so quickly to claim your assets. Their fraud means many transfers were never fully completed. 9 months after the night of confrontation, the trials concluded. Derek, with his history of suspicious deaths and role as the mastermind, received a sentence of 30 years without possibility of parole for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Vanessa received 18 years, a lighter sentence, reflecting her secondary role and eventual cooperation with prosecutors. I attended the sentencing not out of vindictiveness, but to close that chapter definitively. As the bailiff led Vanessa away, she turned toward me. "Priscilla," she called out, her voice breaking. "I am sorry. Not for getting caught, but for everything. I know you will never forgive me. I would not either." I did not respond. Some wounds went too deep for words to bridge, some betrayals too fundamental to ever repair. The door closed behind her, and with it I closed the door on that part of my life. Later that evening, alone in my apartment, I stood at the window, watching the lights of ships in the bay, each moving through darkness, guided by their own navigational systems, plotting their own course through potentially treacherous waters. Not so different from people, really. My phone chimed with a message from Luis Rivera, the fishing boat captain who had rescued me. We had stayed in touch, and I had funded his son Marco's college education in gratitude. "Saw the news about the sentencing," his message read. "The ocean did not take you because you have more to do in this world. Remember that." Looking out at the vastness of the bay, I finally allowed myself to cry, not from grief or anger, but from release. I had survived the unsurvivable twice over the cold depths of the ocean and the colder depths of human betrayal. Whatever came next would be on my terms, navigating by stars of my own choosing. 1 year after the sentencing, I stood on the deck of a small yacht, not the ostentatious Azure Dream, but a modest vessel I had chartered for the day. The Pacific stretched before me, the same waters that had nearly claimed my life now glittering peacefully in the morning sun. This time, I was not a victim, but a captain of my own journey, both literally and figuratively. "Are you sure about this?" Jane asked, standing beside me at the railing. She had remained my right hand through everything, her loyalty, one of the few constants in my transformed life. "I need to face it," I replied, looking at the coordinates on the GPS, the approximate location where I had been thrown overboard. Not to relive the trauma, but to write a new ending to that story. The trial and sentencing had dominated headlines for months, a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal that captivated the public imagination. Investigation into Derek's past had revealed even more disturbing patterns, with authorities reopening cases of 2 previous girlfriends whose accidental deaths now appeared suspicious. Vanessa's cooperation had helped prosecutors build an airtight case, though her tearful testimony about being manipulated by Derek rang hollow against the evidence of her active participation. I had watched the legal process unfold with a strange detachment, as if observing characters in a play rather than people who had once been central to my life. The psychological distance was necessary for my survival, a protective barrier between my present and the painful past. My recovery had not been linear. There were days of progress, followed by nights of paralyzing nightmares, moments of strength interrupted by unexpected panic attacks, when a boat engine sounded too similar to the Azure Dream, or when someone approached me from behind, unexpectedly. 3 months after the sentencing, on Theodore's advice, I began working with Dr. Elena Ramirez, a therapist specializing in trauma and betrayal. Our sessions were challenging, forcing me to confront not just the physical trauma of nearly drowning, but the deeper wounds of trust violated by those closest to me. The hardest betrayals to heal from are those perpetrated by the people who were supposed to love us, Dr. Ramirez observed during one particularly difficult session. "Your experience was extreme, but the fundamental wound-broken trust is something many people understand." That insight led to my first concrete step toward meaningful recovery, founding the Phoenix Trust, a foundation dedicated to helping victims of financial crimes and domestic betrayal. The organization provided legal support, therapy resources, and emergency funds for people trying to escape dangerous relationships, particularly those complicated by financial control and manipulation. Why Phoenix? A reporter asked at the foundation's launch. Because rising from ashes is not just a myth, I explained. It is a process painful and necessary, and no one should have to do it alone. The foundation became my passion, a way to transform my suffering into something constructive. I assembled a board of experts in relevant fields, created partnerships with existing support organizations, and funded research into the warning signs of dangerous relationships disguised as love. My approach to business also transformed. I returned to the technology world, not as an executive, but as an angel investor, focusing on startups led by women and minorities who had traditionally struggled to secure funding. My traumatic experience had sensitized me to power imbalances and the importance of creating more equitable systems. Personal relationships proved more challenging to rebuild. The double betrayal had left me wary, my ability to trust fundamentally damaged. I maintained a small circle of proven loyal friends, including Jane, Olivia, Martin, and Theodore, who had stood by me through the darkest times. Beyond them, I kept most people at a comfortable distance. 6 months after the sentencing, I made one of the most difficult decisions of my recovery journey. I requested a prison meeting with Vanessa. Theodore thought it was a mistake, Dr. Ramirez supported it as a potential step toward closure, provided I had realistic expectations. The meeting took place in a sterile visitation room under the watchful eyes of corrections officers. Vanessa looked smaller somehow, the prison uniform hanging loosely on her frame, her once perfectly maintained appearance, now plain and institutional. When I entered, her eyes widened with surprise. She had requested meetings several times, but this was the first I had accepted. "Priscilla," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from her, maintaining eye contact, but saying nothing, waiting. "I have had a lot of time to think," she continued nervously, "about who I am, about what I did. The therapist here says I should take full responsibility without excuses. So that is what I am trying to do." She took a deep breath. "I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and no apology can ever be adequate. But I am sorry, truly sorry." Why, I asked, the single word containing all my questions? Why me? Why murder? Why betray family? Vanessa's composure cracked. "I was jealous of you my entire life. You were always the smart one, the capable one. Even when I got more attention for my looks or personality, I knew it was superficial. You were building something real, something lasting. When Derek approached me with his plan, it felt like finally having power over you." She wiped her eyes. "It is disgusting, I know. I disgust myself. Derek approached you first." This detail contradicted her court testimony, where she had claimed Derek manipulated her after they began an affair. She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "Before he ever met you, he had researched successful women in tech and targeted you. He needed someone close to you, someone who could be named in your will. He offered me a percentage." She looked up, her expression haunted. I said yes immediately. That is the kind of person I was. The past tense was interesting, suggesting she saw her former self as a different person. Whether that represented genuine change or just another manipulation, I could not tell. "Do you know what the hardest part was?" I asked, my voice steady. "Not nearly drowning, not the betrayal itself. It was realizing that in all our years as sisters, all the times I helped you financially, all the family holidays and shared experiences, you never actually saw me as a human being. I was just a resource to be exploited." Tears streamed down her face. I know, and I cannot change that or fix it. I will be 60 years old when I get out of here. All I can do is try to become someone different than the person who did those terrible things. I stood to leave, having heard what I came for. Not forgiveness, not closure exactly, but confirmation of what I had already sensed. The betrayal had never been about me. It reflected the broken moral compasses of Derek and Vanessa, their internal emptiness that no amount of money could ever fill. At the door, I turned back. I do not hate you, Vanessa. That would require emotional investment I am no longer willing to make. I wish you well in becoming whoever you are trying to become. But we will never be family again. Her sob followed me out of the room, but it did not follow me out of the prison. For the first time, I felt truly free of the emotional weight of her betrayal. Now, standing on the yacht at the site of my near death, I completed another circle of healing. I had brought white roses, one for each month of my recovery journey. One by one, I dropped them into the water, watching them float away on the current. This is not about forgiveness, I said to Jane and the small group of friends who had accompanied me on this pilgrimage. It is about reclaiming this space, this experience, about acknowledging that I survived not just through luck, but through my own strength and the help of good people. The final rose I held onto for a moment longer. This one is for the person I was before the trusting woman who died in these waters. I honor her memory, but I do not mourn her anymore. She has evolved into someone stronger. As the last rose joined the others on the water, a sense of peace settled over me. Not the naive peace of someone untouched by tragedy, but the hard-won serenity of a survivor who has rebuilt from ruins. Back on land, I continued building my new life. The Phoenix Trust expanded nationally, helping thousands of people escape dangerous situations. My investment portfolio supported dozens of promising startups led by founders from underrepresented backgrounds. I developed new friendships cautiously, but genuinely creating a chosen family to replace the one that had betrayed me. 2 years after the confrontation, I published a memoir titled After the Fall Rebuilding, When Your Foundation Crumbles. It became a surprising source of connection with others who had experienced different, but similarly devastating betrayals. The book's success led to speaking engagements where I shared my journey not as a victim, but as someone who had faced the worst and emerged whole if changed. The most important lesson I learned, I told an audience of survivors at a Phoenix Trust event, is that while trust can be broken catastrophically, it can also be rebuilt deliberately, not as a default setting anymore, but as a conscious choice based on evidence and boundaries. And paradoxically, that kind of trust earned, rather than given blindly, creates stronger connections than I had before. I never remarried or even dated seriously in those first years of recovery. Some wounds needed more time than others. But I remained open to possibility, refusing to let Derek and Vanessa take future joy from me, along with everything else they had tried to steal. Today, watching the ocean from my yacht, I see it differently than I once did. Not just as the site of my near death, but as the beginning of my rebirth. The vast water that nearly claimed me also carried me to Luis and Marco Rivera, to a second chance to the person I am now becoming. Life offers no guarantees against betrayal or loss. People we trust may reveal themselves as strangers. Foundations we thought solid may dissolve beneath our feet. The only certainty is our capacity to begin again, to build something new from whatever remains. What is your story of resilience? Have you ever had to rebuild after a betrayal or loss that seemed impossible to overcome? Share your experience in the comments below. Every story of survival strengthens others who are still in the darkness. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video, Subscribe to hear more stories of transformation and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength. Thank you for witnessing my story. And remember, sometimes our greatest power is revealed only after we have been broken.